So, hi, I'm Scott Goodwin. I'm the Managing Director of NetSapiens International. I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Brown from Fornet. Rob is the Business Information Security Officer at Fornet, and he brings extensive experience in designing, operating secure communications platforms for some of the most demanding environments in the government sector. Fornet specialises in delivering high assurance collaboration and communication services across central government. They're also a valued NetSapiens partner, using one of our platforms for their communications solution. So, hello, Rob.
Hi.
Good to see you.
What an intro. Yeah. Thanks.
So, Rob, how do you get a fancy title like that? Do you want to give us a little bit of background on you?
I've been with Fornet for 16 years now, and I was initially an engineer. And I was very keen on UC, and at the time it was other platforms, and they were all on premise pretty much actually. I was very interested in the inner workings of things, and that kind of amalgamated and moved over into a security role, because I've always been very keen on security, and then the BISO role was sort of something that I moved into, and now I'm in charge of the compliance across all of our platforms and also what we provide to customers. We provide services into customers' own data centers and into our data centers, and I make sure that they are up to scratch, secure by design, but then also have an ongoing governance process that keep them as secure as possible.
Okay, and a little bit on Fornet. Who are you? What do you markets you serve?
So we do public and private sector, UC, CC, and then out of acquisition from other companies we've acquired, we do cybersecurity services and network security as well, including networks, the physical tin in the networks that you plug into. We've been predominantly was UC and CC, and as I say, over the years it sort of moved over from the on-premise piece to what was then cloud and our own cloud solutions, and then we've got government data centers as well with the antenna piece.
Okay, and which brings me nicely on to government grade. What does that actually mean?
Government grade security. It's not something off the shelf. It's something that you have to govern. That it needs to follow process. You need to have automation only where necessary. Of course, automation first is great, but making sure that you've got the stringent process where if you can't automate, you've got a manual process and you've got a very easy process to follow. Otherwise, people circumvent it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what government grade means to me. It might be different for other people, but certainly that ongoing life cycle of keeping everything secure in the simplest way possible. Without compromising on the uptime of the solution, and the security, obviously.
Yeah, and it's strange times we live in, Rob, right now. Can you describe the security landscape that we're living in? What's keeping you awake at night?
It's attack surfaces. So everything is public facing. Not everything, of course. In the government data centers, that's a completely different animal to what we'd see in the private sector. But everything as a service that's out there now is all born on the internet and born on sort of a zone that everybody can access, and it's about keeping that secure. So that's the thing for me, is making sure that we've got the platforms available to us and to our customers that are easy to onboard, but we're keeping them secure. That's the key piece. Is the APIs, open APIs everywhere now, but it's making sure that you've got that security boundary, and also you're logging the right things as well. So audit and accountability is like number one. Is if the day happens where there's a compromise, you need to know how it happened and walk through the steps of how it happened.
Right. And the most common mistakes that you come across when you're designing a communications solution?
It's security second, I suppose. So it's not necessarily. People are not treating it as secure by design in some ways, and there's API, that's the one area now where people generally tend to target, because it's open, right? People have access to the system and they can do things that you wouldn't want them to do, and it's having that level of security and role-based access control, things like that stop them from making mistakes or malicious intent. And obviously because it's on the internet, the management plane is there as well ordinarily, so you can go to various platforms and you can manage them all over the internet using the same sort of vector that you can to do the usability and the user side of things, so for making and receiving calls. UC and CC is not about what you would see on documentaries, not about breaking the call encryption and listening in on the call. A lot of the attacks happen to the management plane so that they can just open a back door and then do things sometimes silently.
Okay. And what led you to NetSapiens Door in terms of choosing us for a communications platform?
So one of the problems that we've had in the past with other providers is that it's very black box, and what I mean by that is you're given a solution, it's then deployed, and in order to patch and maintain that solution, you're then given the black box to put on top, and it's not very modular. Whereas NetSapiens was fantastic, that everything was enabled and available in one platform, as it were. But also you could then patch and you can manage the solution all by yourself. So we don't need to raise tickets on NetSapiens to patch a solution to know whether things work between certain services. We can do that ourselves with the sandbox and into production. So we've got a really great life cycle of being able to do that. And now because of the platform that it's born on, the Ubuntu platform, it means that we can do live patching as well. And the resiliency, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
Good to hear. Can you give me a little bit of education here as well in terms of what does zero trust architecture mean?
So zero trust is, to state the obvious, it's not trusting anything. So that being the person, the device, and the network potentially that they're accessing from. The biggest risk to any company is the person, right? So that's not necessarily through malicious intent. That could also be accidental. A spam email that's phishing and an attack. They click on a link, completely innocent to the issue, and they could then be open up to an attack. It's about having that constant, persistent checks on all of the platforms where you're accessing from, the versions that you're on, and any anomalous, strange behavior that user might be having. So if they're switching between networks, for example, or they're using a VPN service out of another country, all of that type of stuff is tethered into the zero trust side of things, and it stops them accessing certain services, not everything. So that's you can have different compliance and conditional access policies for different platforms, if you like.
What's the balancing act that you have to play there between, I guess, tight security controls, but also providing a compelling user experience? Because it's got to be a trade-off.
I don't think anyone's unlocked that yet completely. Right. I think there's the key to security, I find, is that it's about being transparent to the user. If you make something difficult for the user, then they will try and circumvent the control. Loads of examples of that, MFA being one of them. If they can find a way around MFA, they might well do that and just log on with the username and password. If they can change a password to something simple, they would do that as well. But it's about that transparency, and ZTNA specifically, whereas it takes the reins from what was VPN architecture. It's now transparent to the user completely. They don't know that they are using a VPN tunnel, as it were, to access a service. They just access the service. Whereas 10 years ago, they'd have to log on to a VPN service. They would then have to put the username credentials in and access that service. It was a convoluted process. Now it's all easy to do. And that's what zero trust is, and born from that is making it easy for the user. So the compliance checks and everything that you check on the device and on the user they don't know that that's happening. It's just there in the background. And if they are accessing a website that might be a malicious one, it will just lock them out. And it won't be as intrusive as you're a baddie, you're a baddie. It's they'll come up with a message, speak to IT, things like that.
And I guess from a kind of procurement advice standpoint, is when security conscious organisations are seeking to kind of deploy a comms platform into their organisation, what's the sort of things they should be asking somebody, I guess, like you?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots, because it depends on which departments you go through as well. So, I mean, of course, I deal directly with the security department. So when they go through this procurement, there's always the questions around penetration testing and IT health checks, annual checking, but also less annual now and more ongoing checks of the platform. And then they look at your history, right? So to see what the platform looks like, and they'll run their own tests on it. So it's looking at they're looking at the platform in a level of detail. Certainly, if I look at a platform that I'm going to bring on board for us, then it's understanding how we can manage that centrally, and that's one of the things in government now that is key. So every response that we we have to everything that we have to respond to from a customer's perspective now in a tender, for example, has to have single sign-on or MFA. And there's a reason for that. Is because then it's very easy to onboard and offboard staff and give permissions as well across the board for all of the platforms, rather than having to log on to server A. And back to the security piece, you don't want to log on to NetSapiens with a different set of credentials. You want to log on with your corporate set of credentials, and making sure that centralized control is in the system inherently. I mean, that's what NetSapiens excels at, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of future threats, Rob, AI must be part of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, forgive the buzzword there, but it's artificial intelligence, isn't it? Or buzzwords. The biggest threat is that, in terms of the AI is now capable of just adapting to the environment and finding the holes that the ordinary person wouldn't have been able to find in the past. But the good thing to that is that we've got AI on the other side as well. So, AI can spot AI, and what we see. So we run a managed SOC in Fornet, and AI has really helped the SOC because we were able to get rid of that alert fatigue. I mean, one of the things in SOC that's a big problem is that you just get so much data and so many alerts that you don't necessarily know what to deal with, whereas AI can thin that out. So I think it's the biggest threat, but also, the biggest defense as well that we're potentially going to see. One thing about the AI piece is just not to let it do everything though. Don't let it make the decisions. Let it enhance and give you what it thinks would be the decision to make, and then you have a human in the loop in that.
And if there was a single piece of advice that you could give to an organisation in terms of how they, I guess, prepare themselves for this brave new world, what would it be?
Process. The one thing that we've worked really hard on in Antenna especially, although outside of Antenna, so it's actually across the whole business now, it's not as unfair to say that it's just in the government side of things, but is around the process, making sure that where we can automate, we do. Where it's not practical, we potentially delve into it and maybe look at doing that, but we don't necessarily automate completely, and we have a human in the loop. But the process pieces around how you get through your paperwork, your CAB controls, and all the approval process, making that as streamlined as possible. If you make it difficult, then people become lazy, right? And you don't want to fill in the paperwork. Whereas if you can make it a routine task and you document that well, and you complete it well, including backups, right? So making sure that you've got a regular backup and restore procedure, that you're testing constantly as part of either your ISO standards or otherwise. I mean, you should be doing it regardless of what standards you want to have on the platform. If you've got that in a robust fashion from cradle to grave, then you'll find that it doesn't matter what solution you put in. If you follow the process, then it becomes easy. You do it every day, right? So.
Brilliant, Rob. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
I know more now than I did before.
Good. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Yeah.